Welcome guys, this is your friend Naruto Addict 3.0 and we are back with a new fanfic. Today's fanfic is titled, What If Naruto Healed Rin's Broken Heart, and Built a Legendary Bond with Hinata and Tsunade? Part 1. Do it. Rin stared at Kakashi, his Chidori chittering in the rain, arcing from raindrop to raindrop. This was it. This was how she was going to die. She had hoped desperately to die of old age one day. To at least live long enough to have a family would have been fantastic. But dying for the sake of her village. To prevent other Konoha ninja from dying. That was a good death. She could accept that. Rin, Kakashi muttered, his voice drowned out by the storm that fell around them. She chose to believe the drops falling from his face weren't rain. He leveled his arm towards her heart. I'm so sorry. You have to. She smiled at him. She needed to be strong. She didn't want to die. It's for the good of Konoha. Was she telling that to him or herself? Her heart was racing, and the chakra of that beast inside of her was running wild. It was going to break free soon. If Kakashi didn't kill her now, then those other ninja would take her to Konoha, where she would die anyways, and so would hundreds of others. It's for the good of Konoha, Kakashi. Please, before it's too late. They had seconds before those mist ninja finally found her and she was their bomb once again. It was a shame. She would have liked to become a great ninja. To see Konoha one more time. To watch the ninja that Kakashi would become. To fall in love. There was so much she wanted to see. He needed to kill her before she changed her mind. Kakashi lunged forward. The rain parted for him, guiding him right towards her. For a brief second it looked like he was in two places at once. Several feet away from her, and with his hand inches away from her beating heart. She didn't want to die. Time froze. The rain hung in mid-air like crystal teardrops. Kakashi's lightning was little more than a wild spider's web caught in flash freeze. The ninja in the background didn't move, suspended in mid-air like actors in a play. The only thing that moved was that red eye that stared at her, slowly twisting and sucking her in. It felt like her body was being sucked through a straw. At first there was resistance, a futile effort as she was too big, too solid. Then, something gave, and she began to slide, forwards, backwards, left, right, up, down, from every direction she was pushed, pulled, or dragged into that straw that was barely bigger than a pea. It hurt. It hurt a lot. Was this what death felt like? 1,000 miles long, the width of a pinhead. It continued to stretch her, drawing her ever thinner to point where she might break. She was still there in front of Kakashi. But she was somewhere else too. Then came the snap. Whatever had anchored her with Kakashi finally let go and she flew towards her destination like a rubber band stretched to the limit. In one moment Kakashi was there, then the next he was gone. The rain vanished, the forest around her changed, and the sun was shining. What? She looked around, panic setting in. Where was she? What happened to Kakashi? Was she dead? No. That wasn't right. She could still feel that thing wiggling inside of her trying to break out. It was only a matter of time. The seal wasn't meant to last. The fuse was already lit and she was a bomb that was about to go off. I need to get away, she mumbled, taking a step forward. She needed to find the nearest people and get as far away from as possible. Nobody should have to die because of her. Bracing against the tree she felt how drained her body truly was. There was nothing left. And everything hurt. If she stopped now the three tails would be unleashed and who knows how many people would die. She needed to kill herself. A cliff, a river, enemy ninja. Any of those would do. The seal was about to break. Any moment now the three tails would be free. Already she could feel its voice calling to her, gnawing at the back of her every thought. It promised power, and safety, a quick death if she just stopped fighting it. No way in hell, you monster. It growled in response, its voice like the roar of a waterfall. With one more step Rin saw her final resting spot. She didn't know where she was, a cliff somewhere warm and sunny, far away from any real village. It overlooked a beautiful valley full of life and trees. A beautiful last sight. Hopefully someone finds me and gives me a proper burial. She took that last step and closed her eyes, letting everything go. There would be nothing left after this. For the first time in her life, she could finally stop fighting. It felt good. Hopefully Kakashi was alive, and Konoha was fine. This was the right thing to do. The wind pushing against her face as she fell to her death felt cool, clashing with the warm sunlight. Hey! She heard a voice, and her eyes snapped opened. The ground was coming fast and fear clenched her heart. Then someone caught her. He had blonde hair, and blue eyes. With a Konoha headband. Don't worry, I got you. No, 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 no. He was saving her. The seal was breaking, there was no way that she could kill herself in time. She thrashed, trying to push away from the other ninja. Let me go. I need to die. What? Hey, watch it. The boy shouted even as her elbow slammed into cheek. They landed onto the ground in a jumbled heap, the momentum of her fall sending them tumbling into the nearest tree and bush. What the hell? Is that any way to thank someone from saving you? The seal broke. Oh no, Rin held her stomach. Feeling dread as the first bit of the beast's chakra began to pour into her. She looked towards the orange-clad ninja that had just saved her life. He looked to be her age. His selfless nature would be his own downfall. With the last bit of her free will, she gave him a smile. You need to run. Now. Then she was lost to the beast. It was consuming her, eating her mind, body, and soul. Naruto, another voice. This one sounded familiar. Like a distant memory. What are you? She looked and saw a familiar tall man come running. He had long white hair that was probably longer than she was tall. If she was in her right mind, she felt like she might have remembered him. What the? Then everything went red. She was alive, or was she dead? It was hard to tell. Everything hurt, but that had been her normal state for weeks. And it wasn't even that bad, more the dull pain like a sprained pinky, just all over her body. Her chakra was still there, a wonderful reminder that she was very, very, very much alive. But so too was the Sanbi. It was fainter than before, like it was locked up tight in some faraway corner of her soul. So she was alive. When? Why? How? Leaning up, she saw her room was well lit and clean. The warm blanket fell off of her, revealing the numerous bandages that covered her chest so that she looked like a mummy. That explained the hurt. Not so much how she was still alive. You shouldn't move so much. A small voice from beside her croaked. She looked down to see a small toad that sat next to her. The green light of medical ninjutsu poured from her hands. Oh. Rin lay back down, staring at the toad for a moment. Did Minato-sensei send you? Nah. That Jiraiya boy summoned me. I think he's wanting to explain things to you. She lowered her hands and gave a low grumble. I'm just her. Patch up his hasty seal on the three-tailed beast. Jiraiya. She knew that name. Wait. Jiraiya, as in the Jiraiya one of the Sannin and Minato-sensei's sensei. HMPH, don't tell him that or his head will get even fatter. That toad looked her in the eyes. I'm Ma, by the way. It's nice to meet you, Ma. I've only really met Gamabunta once before, but he seemed like a nice enough boss. Aside from the fact that he reeked of alcohol. Do you know what happened to me? Anything at all? Ma scooted closer to her, her hands moving down towards her stomach. I know that you have the three-tailed beast inside of you, and that Jiraiya and Naruto managed push the beast back long enough to place another sloppy seal on you, then called me here to try and make something decent. Do you know how hard it is to work like this? It's one thing to make a working seal from scratch. It's another thing to try and salvage something from scraps. Ma shouted, her right foot thumping on the ground. Sorry. Ma sighed. It's not your fault, dearie. That burden rests on whoever sealed the beast in you to begin with. But I'm just about finished with you. It's a good thing I read that Minato boy's notes. So I'm safe. Rin couldn't fight back the tears as fell from her eyes. She didn't have to die. She got to live to see Konoha again, to see Kakashi and all of her friends and family. As safe as any ninja. Ma touched her stomach with both hands, eyes still locked onto her. This seal is still a mess, but it's the best I can do. It draws its strength from you. The stronger your will is, the strong the seal is. Remember that. Ma vanished in a poof of smoke. For the first time in what felt like ages, Rin found herself smiling. Her happiness was dull like the pain, but it was still there, constantly reminding her to smile. She felt where her seal was on her stomach. She was a Jinchuriki now. But most importantly, she was alive. I need to find Kakashi. Her stomach burned when she sat up, and her arms and legs felt like jello. He's probably worried sick about me. He might even think I'm dead. Minato and Miss Kushina too. They'd probably need her for another mission soon anyways. Kakashi was such a dork, he refused to let anybody but her treat his wounds. It was annoying, but kind of nice too. Sliding open the thin wooden door, Rin came face to face with a verdant green forest, the same forest that she had tried to kill herself in. It smelled like a forest should, thick with sap, pollen, and green. But there was a hint of salt to everything. Were they near the ocean? Where on earth was she anyways? And how did she get here? Damn it, brat, I told you to quit worrying about her, a gruff manly voice echoed from around the corner. She'll be fine, just focus on your training. That was Lord Jiraiya, or at least she thought it was. She'd only briefly met the man once when he interrupted their training to grumble at Minato. That was a week after Obito died. Still, the man was as famous as Lady Tsunade and Lord Orochimaru. She turned around the corner and was blinded by the setting sun for a moment. Was it that late? Or was it early? Her sense of time was all messed up. Standing in a wide open field was Jiraiya, looming over the blonde boy that had saved her. Naruto, if she heard right. Lord Jiraiya, she coughed, bracing her hand against one of the support beams of the patio. The two looked at her. Hey, you're awake, Naruto shouted. He tried to move forward but Jiraiya blocked him. I told you she was fine, now get back to training, I'll talk to her. Jiraiya pushed Naruto back a step, pointing towards a makeshift training dummy. Naruto pouted and Jiraiya sighed. You can talk to her later, okay? But right now give me a bit. That didn't sound good. Jiraiya walked up to her. Even as he stood on the ground and her on the patio, he towered over her, making her feel like even more of a child. His smile wasn't a happy one and he scratched the back of his head nervously. Let's talk inside for a bit. You feeling okay? A little tired, she admitted, placing a hand on her stomach. It felt like she hadn't eaten for days. But a lot more hungry. Jiraiya nodded, stepping past her, opening the door for her and gesturing inside with his hand. We'll eat in a bit, but for now I think we need to have a little chat. The inside of the house was just as clean and spotless as the room she had been in before, only there was a pile of bags sitting in the corner and several empty ramen cups on the countertop. They made her stomach growl, twisting in pain. Right then, so before we get started, can I get your name? Jiraiya laughed, plopping down onto the couch. It was a nervous laugh. I think I might know who you are, but I want to be certain. Rin sat down on a chair, sinking into its comfort. She gave him a small bow, which only made her stomach flare in pain. I'm Rin Nohara, sir. You taught my sensei Minato. Damn. Jiraiya tightened his grip on the couch before he let out a long breath of air, relaxing his body. I was really hoping you were going to say something else. Well, do you want the good news or bad news first? Her heart felt like it was sinking. Did Kakashi die? What happened? Why was she still alive? Was she still going to die? The good news. Please actually be something good. Well, the good news is that the Third Shinobi War is over. Oh, that's excellent. Rin found herself clapping. The sense of dread that had washed over her finally vanished. If the war was over, then she could have a normal life, one where she didn't have to watch her friends die every day. It ended 10 years ago. What? She must not have heard him right. She could believe 10 days, she'd seen others survive comas that long. There was no way she could have missed 10 years like that. She was still short and somewhere between child and adult. I'm sorry, I thought you said the war ended 10 years ago. I did, Jiraiya groaned. Listen, Rin, I don't know how to tell you this. But I think you've traveled forward in the future about 13 years. No. She stood too fast, her head spinning with vertigo, sending her back down to the chair, clutching her head. That's impossible, you're lying. Kakashi is 27 years old. Jiraiya said firmly, standing up and walking over to the bags. He pulled out a photo. Here, take a look. She didn't want to. This was just some elaborate prank. A fever dream. A genjutsu. Anything. Anything but real. The photo slid into her hands. Naruto was in it, looking displeased about something, as was the other boy equally displeased. The girl between them looked rather happy. And the man behind them, their sensei, he was tall, gray-haired, with one eye covered by an Konoha headband and was wearing a mask. Kakashi. There was no other person it could be. Kakashi didn't have an older brother, and his father was gone. At least he looked happy. There was only one question she could ask. How? I was hoping you could tell me that. Jiraiya kneeled down in front of her. All I know is that Kakashi reported that you had disappeared, and there were searches for you. But you were reported dead when the Mizukage claimed to have the Sanbi sealed within him. Rin bit her lip and tried to think. That night was a blur. Kakashi was there, it was raining. And she was going to die. Wait, that was it. There was a red eye. I remember a red eye and feeling like I was being pulled away. Then I was here. So nothing to go on. Jiraiya sat back down onto the couch and rubbed his eyes. Right then, now for the rest of the bad news. There's more. She was not ready for this. Her heart was racing. What else could go wrong? A lot. Minato-sensei was dead. So was his wife Kushina, the third as well. Orochimaru was a traitor to the village and Tsunade was now the Hokage. Now because she was a Jinchuriki, a group of super powerful ninja called the Akatsuki were going to be coming after her. Rin stirred her ramen cup. Her medical training and body told her that she should eat. But her appetite was completely destroyed. It felt like she was all alone, drifting along in the world with no one to cling onto. Now she couldn't even practice medical ninjutsu because of the Sanbi. Her chakra control was all over the place, and it was likely to only get worse as time went on as her seal began to fade. Hi. The blonde boy, Naruto, almost shouted as he came bounding up to her like a puppy. I'm Naruto, I'm the one that saved you earlier. Yay, I know. Rin offered him what little smile she could. I'm Rin, and thank you. No problem. He sat down next to her, slurping from his ramen as happy as can be. I would have done it for anybody, but I'm kind of happy it was you. Why's that? Did he know who she was? What she was now? Well, we're the same. Huh, yay. He pointed towards his own stomach. I have the Kyuubi sealed inside of me, has been there since I was born. And you have the Sanbi in you, right? So we're kind of the same like that. Plus we're both Konoha ninja. Rin let out a laugh, feeling her whole body shaking with each breath. It hurt but it felt good too. Well, I guess we are the same, Naruto, thank you for that. And don't worry, it sucks being alone, I know what that's like, so I won't let you be alone. He had such a large kind smile, it reminded her a lot of Kushina, and a bit of Minato with that hair. You have my word, and I never go back on my word, that's my ninja way, believe it. Rin stared at her cup of ramen, there was always somebody that wanted to protect her. Thank you, Naruto, I'll be sure to hold you to that. Her ramen was cold. Sleep. The roof was divided into 35 tiles in a 5x7 grid. Each tile had approximately 73 grains cross-woven in a thatch pattern. Meaning there were 2,555 grains in total. Which meant she wasn't asleep. Her bed was soft, blanket warm, her stomach was full, and only a dull ache from her injuries remained. In theory she should be able to fall asleep. Flipping her pillow over to the cool side for the 100th time, Rin let out a long breath that stung where her ribs had been bruised when Naruto caught her. This was all just some twisted dream. None of it was real. There was no way that she was still alive. No way that she was the Jinchuriki of the Sanbi. And she definitely wasn't 13 years into the future where everybody she loved was either dead or an adult. It just wasn't possible. It wasn't a genjutsu. It wasn't a dream. It wasn't real. It couldn't be. No matter how real it felt. That was why she couldn't go to sleep. Because this wasn't real. None of it was real. And she could only sleep if it was real. That was the reason why. Her pulse rate was resting at 42 beats per minute, slightly above average for a shinobi of her age. She should be freaking out. Her pulse rate should be much higher. Rin. A voice, Obito's voice, echoed through her head like a branch scratching on the window. Her heart rate doubled, blood raced. She shot up searching for the voice. In the corner where the wall gave way to a giant boulder was Obito's half-crushed body, his lone eye locked onto her. Obito, she croaked, her voice like the groaning of a dead tree. It was Obito. She needed to save him. He was right there. She could still save him. She could do more. Why wasn't her body moving? Why was it stuck to the ground? She couldn't move, she could breathe. Help me, Rin, he begged. You promised you'd watch over me. She was drowning in a sea of air. She couldn't breathe, let alone talk. Help me, Rin, another one. This one looming above her from a crack in the panel. Help me, Rin. Help me, Rin. Help me, Rin. 1,000 Obitos called out to her from 1,000 places. He was in every shadow, glaring at her, clawing at her. It was her fault. He died because of her. If she had been stronger, a better medic, a better fighter, a better anything, then he'd be alive. They shouldn't have just left him there. I'm going to kill you. It was Kakashi. He was directly above her. Kunai pointed at her heart. That's what you want, right? To die so that you won't kill anybody else. She fell backwards away from Obito and Kakashi, their forms turning to water and chasing after her, filling her lungs and pushing her downward. Down, 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 deeper, deeper, darker. She kept falling, breathing in the water as easily as it was air. Only a lone light surrounded her in the growing dark abyss. There was nothing around her but the dark, empty water. A shadow the size of the night moved, its form like the empty space between stars. It rumbled like a storm as the water stirred about her. A red eye larger than the desert sun glared down at her, searing her with its hatred. She was drawn towards it, the water pulling them closer and closer. The eye vanished, and it was only then did she become aware of its intent. It wanted to consume her. With the last of her strength she tried to pull away. The current was too strong. It was going to swallow her whole. She woke up screaming. Sweat clung to every part of her body, forcing the cloth and bandages to cling to her. Every heartbeat stung, like it was a wild animal caged inside of her. Her breath came in sharp gasps. Her ears were ringing. Rin, a voice shouted, and footfalls from outside her room sounded like thunder. Her door swung open and that loud blonde boy came barging in. His face contorted with panic. Are you okay? I heard a scream. Did he have to be so loud? Her body was shaking. She couldn't answer, let alone breath. Her throat was dry, and everything, absolutely everything hurt. This shouldn't be real. She shouldn't be here. She shouldn't know Naruto. His touch was like acid, burning her skin with the bitter cold of frost. You're hot. Did he always have to scream? He ran towards the door, crashing into everything along the way. Hold on. I'll get some water. Just like that, she was alone again, alone in this horrible lie. Nightmare. Girl, Jiraiya groaned, pulling himself into her room like he was pulling himself out of bed. The large man walked without a sound. His familiar presence, no matter how distant it may be, brought her an inch of peace. She nodded, teetering on the brink of falling back down into a panic. It felt like everything that had happened yesterday was slamming into her, trying to break her down. She was in the future, 13 years, where she just happened to run into Jiraiya after being saved by his student. This was just some horrible dream. You wanna talk about it? Jiraiya sat down next her, his body collapsing down like a snow-capped mountain. When she didn't say anything, he continued. Was it the war? The past? The Sanbi? Yes, she eked out, her tongue stuck to the roof of her mouth. Jiraiya groaned, rubbing the sleep from his eyes. The Sanbi is one of the tricky ones. Legends say that it surrounds itself in a nightmare-inducing mist. Did you have any nightmares like that before? Rin shook her head, not trusting her voice. She had a few dreams with Obito in them, but none like that, even after his death. Her dreams of Obito were of the happy times, of him being late and them laughing about it. Never of his death. And then there was Kakashi. Kakashi would never hurt her. Not after he made that promise to Obito. Naruto came bumbling in, looking like he got more water onto him than into the cup. Here, the cup sloshed as he came crashing down beside her. I brought you some water. Overcome by thirst, she drank the nearly full cup in one gulp. It burned on the way down before it cooled her. Thank you, Naruto. Are you okay now? Naruto scooted closer to her. His large eyes danced against his furrowed brow. He kept switching between smiling and frowning. He seemed so familiar. In so many different ways. In a way he reminded her a lot of both Minato-sensei and Obito. Better, she answered, placing a hand against her chest. Her heartbeat was erratic, but stabilizing. Deep even breaths. She was panicking. That's all it was. It was perfect given her situations. Do you want to talk about it? Naruto asked. Your dream, that is. I hear that helps. Rin bit her lip, clutching at her heart. How could she tell them about that dream? They weren't there. They wouldn't understand. Naruto wasn't even born. How could they possibly understand her? She was all alone in this world. Everybody she had ever known was either dead or 13 years older. Kakashi was practically an old man now. Heart rate rising. Panic setting in. She needed to calm down. Just calm down. It wasn't working. Nothing was working. She couldn't stop herself. The cliff was right there. She needed to jump. Rin, Naruto's voice drew her back from the cliff. He was touching her hand, staring at her with the concern of a friend. It was working too. His soft smile was anchoring her to the world. It was just a dream. So don't worry so much. Rin swallowed, her throat stung. This wasn't good. Was she getting sick? That would explain why her face felt warm. She must be running a temperature. Thanks, Naruto. I think I'll be fine for now though. I've just been through a lot. Wanna talk about it? Naruto asked. Brat, Jiraiya growled. Leave the girl alone. Last thing she needs is you beaming at her like the sun. It's fine. Rin gave what little smile she could muster. It wasn't much, just an echo of what she remembered a smile feeling like. Barely scraps. I think I'm feeling better now. Thank you. Still, Naruto whined. Enough, Jiraiya grumbled, falling back down onto his back. It's late. I'm tired. I'll just sleep here. Turn off the light, brat. Wait. You're sleeping in here. She'd slept in the same tent as her team before, but sharing a room was different. Kind of. She had known Kakashi and Obito for years. They grew up together. Well, yay. Jiraiya waved his hand at her like she was just a child. Helps me keep an eye on your seal. He gave a giant yawn that smelled faintly of beer and rolled over like a bear preparing to hibernate. Besides, if you can sleep in the same room with us, it'll save me big later on. What? How would that save you money? And what? Her protests were drowned out by the sound of Jiraiya snoring. It was like the coming of a thunderstorm. Can't you talk to him? Rin looked towards Naruto. Instead of the ally she was expecting to find, she saw that Naruto had gotten his own blanket and pillow. His soft snores already merging with Jiraiya's. If she couldn't sleep before, now there was no way she was going to be able to sleep with these two snoring in her room. That was her last coherent thought. So it was real. That was the truth that glared down at with the intensity of the desert sun, searing away her resistances. She could feel everything. The narrative was coherent when it needed to be, and dreams were incoherent messes. Everything was so real. And yet it was completely unbelievable. Time travel just wasn't possible. It shouldn't be possible. But here she was, apparently 13 years into the future with the Sanbi sealed inside of her with Jiraiya as her only source of information. She needed to get to Konoha. Then she would find Kakashi and ask him. She'd know if Kakashi was the real one. From everything to the scar on his left eye, to his mannerisms, she knew him like the back of her hand. Rin watched as Naruto and Jiraiya trained in the small field that separated the house from the forest. That was all she could do at the moment. Her body was still sore from her injuries, and much of her was still covered in bandages. If she could use her medical jutsu, then she'd be fine. Just another depressing truth. They were doing a chakra exercise of some kind. Alright, brat. Jiraiya bellowed, hands on his hips. I want you to make the Rasengan, but I want you to make it bigger. Bigger? Naruto asked. How's that going to help me? Well, it'll be more powerful than a normal Rasengan. And if you can master that, then you might just be able to handle some of the other stuff I'll be teaching you. Jiraiya rubbed his nose, turning away from Naruto. He was lying. And Naruto was believing him. And I want you to make it 3 times as large. You got it, pervy sage. Naruto shouted. He created a shadow clone like it was the easiest thing in the world. One Mega Sengen coming right up. Jiraiya waved him off, walking towards her. Work on the name. Are you teaching him the Rasengan? Rin asked wide-eyed. Even Kakashi was having problems learning that jutsu, and her and Obito were just hopeless with it. Jiraiya laughed and sat down beside her. Teach nothing, he can already use the Rasengan as good as Minato ever could, still trying to wean him off needing a shadow clone though. Did Minato ever try to teach it to you? Yay. She nodded. I could probably get the shape, but I don't have the power to use it. And with how my chakra is now. Then that's where we'll start. A giant slap to the back nearly knocked the wind out of her. Wait. What? Rin coughed. Her entire body shook with a dull pain. You're going to train me? Yep. Well, at least after you finish recovering, then we're back on the road for the next stop. He smiled, looking so sure of himself. I hear the ladies the next town over are simply divine. Rin groaned. Miss Kushina did always say Jiraiya was a huge pervert and to avoid him at all costs. If at all possible, I'd rather just return to Konoha, Lord Jiraiya. No can do, Jiraiya groaned, placing both hands behind him, looking to the sky. I'm out here training Naruto to be able to stand up against the Akatsuki if they ever manage to get near him. Honestly though, the brat probably thinks I'm training him to take them on. You're in the same basket as him now though. Cause of the Sanbi. Her stomach twisted at the name, and she could feel its cold chakra roil against the seal. Jiraiya nodded. Yep. That's why I'm going to train both of you to control the beast inside of you, if even just a bit, anything to give you an edge against them. But wouldn't I be safe if I stayed in Konoha? Coward. That's what Obito would have said if she had said that to him, Kakashi as well. Just running and hiding while others fought her battles. That's not who she was. Not anymore. I can train there, right? And I might even be able to relearn medical ninjutsu. 6. I'm sorry, Rin. He patted her on the back. I know you must want to see your friends and family. But I can't let you go back to Konoha. His voice lacked the cheerful nature with which it had before. Instead was a serious tone that carried the weight of the world with it. Not until you can at least partially control the Sanbi. Her throat burned and her stomach felt empty. Why? Because you're one of Minato's brat, he laughed, slapping her back once more. And Minato was my brat, so that makes you my brat. Jiraiya's face fell and he glared at Naruto. Besides, my brat found you, so that makes you my responsibility. So basically I'm a lost puppy that Naruto took in. Yep. Now I have to feed you. And make sure you're trained. Jiraiya said before he let out a giant sigh. If you really want, I should be able to arrange for Kakashi to meet up with us in the future. Really? She stood quickly, her voice sharp and loud. Could you really do that? It'd mean so much. Kakashi, she had seen the photo of him, but there was still so much she needed to hear from him. With him she'd be able to know if this whole ordeal was real. No matter how much she wanted it to just be a dream. Sure, I'll send a message once we get to the next town. Jiraiya said with a groan. It's probably for the best that I don't surprise Tsunade with you either, so telling Kakashi might be good for my long-term health. An explosion ended their conversation. Everything had been going fine. He had the Rasengan in his hand and was trying to make it bigger. It worked. Kind of. It wobbled a bit, sure. But that was nothing to worry about. Until it doubled in size and exploded, knocking out his clone and sending him flying backwards. Fortunately, a tree caught him. A sharp ringing sound drowned out all other noise and a blunt pain locked away any other sensation. Okay, so maybe making a bigger Rasengan wasn't as easy as just pumping more chakra into it. In hindsight, that seemed really, really stupid. But he was so close. He should just try again with slightly more chakra. Or was it less? Naruto. A female voice called, running over towards him. It was Rin. She was still hurt herself but still ran towards him. She slid down next to him, grabbing his hand. Are you okay? Yay. Naruto laughed, holding up his hand. His pinky hurt a lot. And he couldn't really move it too much. Or at least I will be. Don't worry about it, I heal fast. That made her mad. She was cute in a scary kind of way. A pain seared through him when she grabbed his hand and popped his finger back into place. Faster healer or not, if you don't set a dislocated finger like this, it won't heal correctly and that'll just cause it to hurt more later. She ripped off part of her robe and began to tend his finger. Honestly, I guess boys just never learn. Don't they? Are you a doctor or something? Naruto asked, wide-eyed. The only doctors he knew was Granny and that Kabuto jerk. If I could use medical ninjutsu, I'd be able to heal this quicker. She huffed, her brown eyes sparkling with concern. So you'll just have to rest for now, no training for the rest of the day, you got that? Scary. Naruto nodded his head as quickly as he could, watching as Rin continued to dress his wounds. Gotcha. Good. She smiled sweetly at him. And he felt his heart thump in his chest, and his cheeks begin to warm. You know, his mouth did that thing where it talked without listening to his brain first. You're kind of cute when you're doing this. She glared at him, tugging on the fabric hard enough to send a sharp jolt of pain through his whole body. If you start hurting yourself on purpose, I'll make you regret it. I won't, I promise. She was even cuter when she was angry. It was a good thing that he didn't need to try to hurt himself. The Rasengan was a lot harder than she remembered it being. But in some ways it was easier. She had more than enough chakra to try again and again. But it was wild and unwieldy, like she had went from turning on a faucet to trying to control the flow of a river. It was easier to fill up the glass, but it was also easier to drown in it. Something was in the water, a beast lurking in the depths, watching her, waiting, a constant reminder that she was not alone. And she would never truly be alone again. Rin tied a knot on the air balloon. It was about the right size, and her lips hurt from blowing up so many of these stupid balloons. The pack Jiraiya had given her wasn't even halfway empty yet. Careful. Just a sip. A drop. The balloon popped the moment her chakra filtered into it. Rin grit her teeth. What was the point? How was this going to help her? Lord Jiraiya, is this really what's best for me? The old man groaned, looking like a grandpa woken up from his afternoon nap. Oh, I'm still trying to figure out what to do with you. The Rasengan is busy work. How could Minato call this man his sensei? He was so flaky. Like he didn't have a plan and was just flying by the seat of his pants. It was frustrating. Look, Jiraiya sat up, rolling his shoulders to look her in the eyes. I know it's hard for you. But I'm still not sure on how best to handle the Sanbi. Still, why the Rasengan? Wouldn't I be better off with an actual chakra control exercise? Rin asked. She couldn't get the Rasengan the first time even with her excellent control. This just felt pointless. Sure, you can train however you want. Jiraiya shrugged. The Rasengan is just useful like that. It's a versatile jutsu. Just learning it helps you get better chakra control, and not just for form either but spiritual as well. Minato had wanted it to be his ultimate legacy. His gift to the leaf, a jutsu that every leaf ninja would learn in the academy. That's why he made the steps the way they are, to make them so simple that an academy student could learn them. Really, he had taught them all the jutsu, or at least tried to. It did have all the elements of molding chakra, physical, power, and control. Yep. Jiraiya scratched at the scruff on his chin. Minato never did anything without at least 3 reasons. And what about you? Rin took another step forward. I've watched you train Naruto. It was less training and more Jiraiya, just watching him with that same stupid look on his face. And I can't understand why you're having him do more of the same. Minato and Naruto are kind of the same. Jiraiya nodded towards Naruto as the boy maintained a Rasengan several times larger than a normal one. Rin focused on Naruto. Besides looks, Naruto was nothing like her sensei. I'm not seeing it. They do a lot with a little. Jiraiya cracked a smile. How many jutsu do you think your sensei knew? A lot. Minato always seemed able to help her with even medical jutsu, and Obito with whatever fire jutsu he was having problems with. And how many did he use in a fight? 2. Minato only ever used 2 jutsu. Hiraishin, and Rasengan. 2. That's right, Minato fought using 2 jutsu, sure he could summon toads. But when it was just him, he used 2 jutsu. 2 jutsu, and a lot of fancy throwing. Jiraiya laughed. But he did a lot with those 2 jutsu, more than a lot of other people ever could. And that's not just because of how powerful the jutsu is. It was as much his mastery over it as it was how he could use it. A simple jutsu can be used in many more ways than a complicated one. Take Kakashi for example. What can his Chidori do? The man turned towards her, and she was beginning to see the pieces. The Chidori was powerful and strong as the Rasengan perhaps. But it could only do one thing. Kill. Exactly. And the Hiraishin on its own can't do that. But it can do a lot more. There's a lot of value in being anywhere at any time. For a guy like Minato, who planned 5 steps ahead at all times, it was perfect. Jiraiya nodded towards Naruto. Naruto's the same way. But with his shadow clone jutsu, Naruto can be everywhere at once. Naruto makes things up as he goes, which is why having a versatile jutsu is more important than having a bunch of powerful jutsu that do one thing. Oh, Rin blinked. That actually made a lot of sense. But wouldn't a bunch of jutsu that do a bunch of different things be better? For someone like my sensei. That can earn you the title God of Shinobi. He had a jutsu for every situation. Jiraiya's face fell and he stared at Naruto with dead eyes. But, Naruto. He's an idiot with a great future. But an idiot nonetheless. You might be a great teacher, Lord Jiraiya. Rin looked at Naruto just in time for his oversized Rasengan to blow out. But you're kind of an. Jiraiya just laughed. You're not the first woman to tell me that. But, I think I have an idea on where to start with you. Which is? Rin asked. She should trust Jiraiya more, he at least seemed like he knew what he was doing. That or he was really good at just making stuff up. He pointed towards a creek. We're going to go with the current. Instead of trying to get your chakra control to return to what it used to be, it might be better to just go with the flow and focus on doing what the Sanbi can do. And water's going to help me with that. Jiraiya nodded. The Sanbi has a strong affiliation with water, so learning to control water is your first step to controlling the Sanbi. Great. Rin muttered, staring at the babbling brook just through the trees. Just great. Hey brat. Jiraiya's voice drew his attention away from his jutsu just long enough for it to collapse in a puff of air. He had it that time. He knew he did. He could practically feel it in his bones. But that stupid pervert just had to ruin his concentration. What? Calm air. Jiraiya waved him over to the stream where Rin stood ankle deep in the water. Stupid pervert. Naruto mumbled under his breath. Still, it meant he got to train with Rin. Unless Jiraiya was sending him to town again. He was totally going to spend all the pervert's money on ramen again if it was for something stupid. How was he even supposed to bring home beer and ladies? The creek was wide, and crystal clear, filled with thousands of smooth stones. A few minnows could be seen, though the majority of them were nibbling at Rin's feet as she tried not to giggle. Bandages still covered much of her arms and the upper part of her legs, but she had her hair tied in a ponytail that sat on top of her head. She looked adorable. Hi Rin. The water was freezing as it rushed between his toes. Oh hi. She nodded at him. I don't really know what we're doing over here. That makes 3 of us. Jiraiya slapped a hand onto his head and ruffled his hair in that painful grating way. I'll be honest, I'm just taking a long shot with this, so if you feel like it's getting rough, I want both of you to let me know. Water is one of the easiest elements to manipulate. Jiraiya reached down, cupping a bit of the stream in his hand and letting it fall. Mostly because you can touch it and move it with your own hands. For that reason alone, it makes an excellent way to learn chakra control. Especially for those that have a water affinity, which Rin likely has because of the Sanbi. Actually, water is one of my affinities, Rin smiled. But I never really practiced with it because I preferred medical jutsu. Affinities. What were these guys talking about? This sounded like another thing he would have learned if he paid attention in class. Which meant it was probably boring to talk about. But really awesome to do right. What are those? Oh, Rin smiled holding up a finger. Affinities are kind of what your chakra like to do naturally. It makes jutsu that share an affinity with it easier to do. Some jutsu are even impossible without an affinity. Kakashi's Chidori is an example of a jutsu with a lightning affinity. Man, that's so cool. Naruto squirmed in the water. He probably had a affinity like explosions or death. Wait, he used a lot of shadow clones. It had to be shadow, right? Hey, pervy sage, what kind of an affinity do I have? Jiraiya shrugged. Wind probably. How do you know that? I don't know any wind jutsu. Wind sounded so lame. Jiraiya had to be wrong. Because you're such an airhead. Hey. Rin gave a soft laugh that squelched his anger. At least for right now. You two fight like siblings. Anyways, Jiraiya groaned, popping his neck loud enough to be heard. That's not important right now. I don't know any wind or water jutsu, but this is a training technique that Sarutobi-sensei taught me. He fished into the water and pulled out a stone. Now then, it's a bit like the second stage of the Rasengan, in that power is key. He rolled the smooth stone around in his hands, showing them every side of it. But so too is control. He pushed the rock down into the water. Ripples began to form around his hand, radiating outwards, and bubbles began to form around the rock, growing more and more. I actually think this is what inspired Tsunade's monstrous strength. Or at least the failure state of it does. The bubbles stopped and he held up the same stone. Now completely spherical. You see, too much power and the stone cracks, or shatters. Too little and nothing happens. Basically just push the water around the stone until you get something nice and smooth. With all the warning to had at the start, I thought you were going to give us something cool to do, like a new jutsu. Like being able to control the water and make it slap people. Naruto whined. I actually think it's a pretty creative exercise. Rin knelt down into the water, picking up one of the stones. For a moment nothing happened, then a crack formed. It's harder than it looks too. Great, now he looked like a jerk in front of Rin. Thanks a lot, Jiraiya. Slamming his hand into the creek, Naruto grabbed a rock. He looked towards Rin, smiling. So how did you make it do that? I'm not very good with chakra stuff. Well, you start by. So, are you an Inuzuka? If he wasn't training, Naruto seemed to lack the natural ability to leave her alone. In a lot of ways he was like a puppy, or like that cat she fed once that kept coming back and meowing at her for food. Only less cute, and a lot harder to ignore. Maybe the cat was still alive. What are you talking about? Rin asked, poking at her food for the 100th time. She should eat, she knew that. But her appetite just wasn't there. So she poked, like a child playing with her food. Naruto sat down next to her. A cup of instant ramen was in his hands. She was beginning to think that his hair was blonde from the sheer amount of noodles he ate. It couldn't be good for him. Then again, she really didn't have a lot of room to talk about proper eating right now. Those markings on your cheeks, they're kind of like what my friend Kiba and his sister have. Oh, he snapped his finger. And they were in Inuzuka. Right, the dog clan. No, I'm not, last name is Nohara. Ah, Naruto took a noisy slurp from his noodles. So, why do you have those purple stripes? Not that there's anything wrong with them, I think they're neat. Neat, huh? Rin took a bite of her food, popping a crunchy ball of rice into her mouth. Well, the woman that taught me medical jutsu had them. That was an old sting, from her days in the academy, before she was part of Team 7. Miku was killed in the Third Ninja War, so these are kind of my way of remembering her. I'm sorry, his ramen dropped ever so slightly. I shouldn't have asked a question like that. It's fine. It was fine. Everything was fine. Really, really fine. She was kind of like a mother to me, but it happened a long time ago. Wait, a long ago. Still, Naruto left his word hanging, a forgotten thought to never be touched again. He looked sadder about the subject than she was. What about you? She needed to change the subject, to get her head out of the past. Being there wasn't going to help her. Another crunchy rice ball popped into her mouth. Somehow she had eaten half of her meal without even thinking about it. Huh, are you from a clan or anything? Oh, now he really looked sad. Then he took a deep breath and sat up, shoulders back like he was overflowing with pride. Nah, I'm an orphan. You too, huh? Rin poked at one of the last few rice balls, rolling it around the container. When was the last time she talked about this? Right, when Miss Kushina was threatening to adopt her. That would have been something. Yay, the old man, a third Hokage, said that I was found after the fourth Hokage sealed the Kyuubi into me, and that I was a newly born. Naruto smiled up at the sun as it began its long journey behind the mountains to bathe their valley in shadow. He said that my parents died as heroes. Did he ever tell you their names? Rin asked. He said that he'd tell me when I was older. Naruto smiled. I used to hope that they were gone on some super awesome top secret mission and one day they would come back and I'd have a family. Kind of silly, right? Not at all. She was out of food and the taste was already fading from her mouth. What's it like being a Jinchuriki? That killed Naruto's cheerful demeanor, and the temperature dropped as the shadow of the mountain finally fell over them. Had she overstepped her bounds? He was so open with it before, it was practically the first thing he said to her. People avoid you. Naruto took a long breath. No matter what I did, they kept ignoring me like I didn't exist. A lot of kids my age were told to avoid me. I got called demon a lot. I got really annoyed by it. So I started to prank people. Then they noticed me and were really mad about it. They started to kick me out of their shops, so I pranked them again. That probably didn't help. Yay, well, they deserved it. Naruto's chest swelled with pride. And I was good at it. One time I painted over all the Hokage faces. Iruka-sensei was so mad at that. Rin scrunched up her face, and snorted. Minato was the fourth Hokage, right? Why would you paint the Hokage monument? It sounded like you liked them. Because I'm going to become the greatest Hokage. Believe it. He shot up, pointing towards the sky. Rin blinked, feeling her lips tug into a smile. It felt like her first smile. Before she broke out into a massive fit of giggles. She could see it clearly now. The parallels that connected Naruto and Obito and that dream that connected them. I'm sure you will, Naruto. He grinned at her and took his seat once again. Thanks. I'm sure you'll become a great ninja as well. Sure. Her smile left with the wind. What was her dream? Minato-sensei had once told her that trying to find a dream was just as important as having one. Sometimes it was easy, sometimes it was hard. Kushina would then come in and shout something about never giving up until the very end. Sensei. Huh, say Naruto. She already has his attention, but he still perked up, sitting a bit more properly. Do you hate Minato-sensei for sealing the Kyuubi in you? Minato. His face scrunched up. Oh, he's the fourth Hokage, right? I mean, I kind of resent him for it, I guess. He fell onto his back staring up at the awning. I don't know. I just want to know why me. Why couldn't it have been some other kid? Someone that had a family or something. It was bad enough being an orphan, Naruto muttered under his breath. Well, I knew Minato-sensei pretty well. It was weird to think that he of all people could be killed. He seemed so invincible, both on and off the battlefield. It made sense that he was made the Hokage. He wouldn't do something for no reason, and if he chose you to hold the Kyuubi, then he must have believed that you were the best choice. That you could control it. Rin, he muttered, still staring up at the ceiling. Tears gathered at the edge of his eyes and his lips were twisted upwards into a smile. Thank you. She fell on her back next to him. No problem. Wait. Naruto shot up, wide eyes staring down at her. You were taught by the fourth Hokage. Did he have to be so loud? An island of light floated within a sea of darkness. Fog mingled with the shadows, creating 1,000 monsters set to devour her spark of light. But something larger lurked within the darkness. It feasted on the shadows, creating a vast empty coldness. And her light was next. A single hungry eye appeared, bursting through the shadows like a whale breaching. Darkness splashed onto her light, lingering for a second before it sunk back down. It grew closer without moving, until she stood before a mountain. Its voice like a rockslide grated against her body and forcing her light to shake and shimmer. The single red eye glared at her with the hatred of the desert sun. Though it only uttered a single word, its voice stretched out for 1,000 years. Leave. Her light shrunk, trying to move away, but there was darkness everywhere holding her in place. She couldn't move. She was trapped here with this eater of light and darkness poised to swallow her whole. Leave. Like thunder without sound, the beast bellowed. Its massive mouth opening like a tear, in reality sucking her in. She tried to get away, but the tendrils of shadow clung to her, dragging her down into the beast. The light and dark vanished. There was nothing in here. Nothing but her. She was alone. Completely alone. She looked for anything. Light, dark, hot, cold, anything. Any spark that she could cling to as proof that she existed. Anything. Anyone. Please. Help. I don't want to fade away. The nothing around her was seeping in, taking her apart piece by piece. Soon nothing would be left. And she would be gone. There was no hope. She was going to vanish and no one would remember her. Who was she? What was her name? Name? She had a name, right? She should remember her name before she went away forever. Rin. It was barely a whisper, but it was the loudest thing she had ever heard. Rin. That's what her name was. That's who she was. She was Rin. Rin Nohara. What was she doing here? She was doing something important. Right, she was training with Naruto. Something about getting him used to genjutsu, and to train her how to use it. One of the Sanbi's strengths was illusions, nightmares, and trickery. Learning genjutsu was supposed to help her to control it. But then she was here. Snap out of it, Rin. She felt the voice as much as she heard it. It was like a hand clasped around her wrist, showing the way to the light. Wait, that was a hand. It was Naruto. He was pulling her towards him. The world snapped into focus around her. Water and mist surrounded her in twin helixes, thrashing at Naruto as they spun with enough force to cut and batter him. She tried to speak, but water blocked her mouth and all that came out was gurgles. What was happening? She needed to regain control. But she was but a small boat in the middle of the ocean at storm. The Sanbi was so vast and running wild around her. Rin. Naruto's hand flew towards her, his body being racked by tendrils of water. He was bleeding too. The coloration on his arm showed that it was bruised, or broken. You can do it, Rin. You can fight it back. Fight it back. How? Her chakra was everywhere, spread thin to try and stop the Sanbi from running wild. She needed to draw it in. The water and mist, those were hers, made from her chakra. The seal was in shambles, cracks everywhere, and the Sanbi was frightened. Why was it afraid? That didn't matter. It was lashing out and hurting her friends. She needed to stop it. Something gave, and the water began to recede back into her, tasting of earth and wind. With each gallon that returned to her body, she felt control returning bit by bit. She fell to the ground coughing and gasping for air. Her heart was racing and her head pounded with a headache as her ears continuously popped. But that was nothing compared to the burning on her stomach. The seal was cold, sucking away all the heat in her body. Rin. Naruto was at her side in a heartbeat, even with his limp. One of his hands on her back, rubbing small circles, helping with the coughing. Are you okay? Wait, no, that's a stupid question. Are you back to normal? Not that you are normal, not that being normal is a bad thing or that being not normal is a bad thing, but are you still being Naruto? She coughed out a bit of the water onto the hardened dirt. It tasted like bile. Shut up for a second. Okay. The world spun, then came to a sudden halt. The ground felt slanted like she was on a steep hill, and only Naruto kept her from falling over. Deep even breaths. Deep even breaths. Slowly, muscle by muscle, her body stopped shaking. The world began to right itself and she began to feel a bit more like herself. She was in control of her body. The Sanbi had rescinded back into the seal, but why? Why now? How did it break out to begin when the seal should have stopped it? It didn't make any sense. Not that anything in the past 2 weeks had made any sense. Her eyes landed on Jiraiya, his hands on the ground, and a circle of sears radiated outward from him and around her. You feeling alright, girl? I'm fine, fine in the sense that everything hurt and her ears wouldn't stop ringing. What happened? Well, you did this genjutsu thing on me, but it didn't really work, and then you started to scream, and then you went quiet and water started to pour out from your body. It was kind of gross, and you started to attack me and Jiraiya, like the time when we first met you, but it's okay, you're all better now. Naruto explained in a single breath. I was really scared about you, by the way. I'm happy you're back. Thank you, Naruto. She took another breath. Her arms felt heavy and the dirt below her looked comfortable enough to call a bed. No, she hurt these two, she needed to make sure that they're okay. Can you help me stand? I'd like to inspect your wounds. Not so fast, girly. Jiraiya barked, standing up with more than a few pops and groans. Me and Naruto are tougher than we look, especially the brat, he's too stupid to know when he's too hurt to move. Hey, and you should know not to push yourself as a medic. It wasn't like she could use chakra to heal them anyways. Jiraiya loomed over her, guiding her into a sitting position. First things first, I need to see your seal. Rin nodded, her eyes felt moist and her body empty. She just wanted to go to sleep, and never wake up. With a pained breath, she rolled up the front of her shirt, just enough to reveal her seal. It still felt weird having a man inspect her stomach so closely. Her eyes drifted towards Naruto, who was looking at her stomach over Jiraiya's shoulder. Could you look away? Huh? Naruto's eyes snapped towards her face. He shook his head, eyebrows raised and the color in his cheeks flared. Oh, sorry Rin, I'm just. Get lost, brat. Jiraiya growled, elbowing Naruto away. The deep scowl on his face made him look 20 years older than his normal smile did. His fingers left a trail of fire as he traced over the seal. She could feel the smallest amount of his chakra prodding against it, like the matron at the orphanage making certain that they were all in bed. Only he was making sure the monsters were locked in the closet. Damn, Jiraiya spat, standing, his frown etched into his face like a horrifying visage. He began to pace back and forth, glaring at her seal. Rin felt her heart sink. That didn't sound good. It sounded the opposite of good. What's? She swallowed, unable to form the words for a moment. What's wrong? Jiraiya looked at her, running a hand over his face to stretch it out only for it to return to form with a groan that shook the earth. I thought you had more time. Her throat went dry and she just looked at him, tears welling in her eyes. This was it, she was going to die. Her words died in her throat. What's wrong with her seal? Naruto asked, still sneaking glances at her. She wanted to thank him for asking that question. Instead, all she could do was nod. Everything, Jiraiya swore, and swore twice more. He bit his lips, still glaring at her stomach. It's nothing more than a band-aid to the problem. I thought it would last a few years. Probably less. How long? The words erupted out of her, leaving her throat nothing more than a charred path. Her stomach roiled again and the dread set in once more. She was shaking and felt cold. And very alone. 2 years, maybe less. So that was it, she had 2 years left to live. At least she'd be able to see Kakashi before she died. What? Naruto's voice was panicked, loud, and frantic. There has to be something we can do, pervy sage. Can't we put a better seal on her or something? We can't give up, not until the very end. Kushina used to say the same thing. The familiarly filled her with warmth. Thank you. It was barely a whisper, and Naruto didn't even look at her, his eyes still locked on Jiraiya. There is, but it won't be easy. Jiraiya kneeled before her again. A new seal would only make things worse, but if you can master the Sanbi in that time, then it will stop fighting against the seal, and you'll live. Isn't that what we were doing? Jiraiya nodded. Yep, just consider this as extra motivation. You'll just be training like your life depends on it. And I'll be there training with you. Naruto placed a hand on her shoulder, showing off that giant smile of his. He really was a lot like Obito. It was almost impossible not to smile with support like this, even as she stared at the gates of death guarded by the Sanbi. She almost felt like she could do it. I'll do my best. Rin sunk her toes into the sun-baked sand. The warmth of the top layer mixed with the coolness that laid beneath was one of her favorite things about the beach. No matter what went around in the world around her, she could rely on the ocean to calm her, and let her just forget about everything. The tide was coming in. A dozen small islands barely big enough to stand on marked the rocky peaks of the tide pools. If they had arrived sooner, she would have been ankle deep in the cool ocean water watching the creatures that called the pools home. Instead, she was watching the sunset change the ocean from a radiant blue to a soft purple capped with red and a golden crown where the sun met the water. With a sigh that weighed more than a mountain, Rin pulled her knees up to her face, using them as a pillow to watch the sea change colors. Soon the sea would be dyed black, save for the stars acting as a million shimmering jewels off of its placid surface. It would have been the perfect beach day, warm, with little to no wind. She could already see it. Obito would be loud and jump into the water first thing, only to get attacked by some sea creature. Kakashi would tease him like he always did. And she would heal him as she always did. Minato-sensei would just laugh like he had just been reminded how much younger they were. Then he'd stop when Miss Kushina would show up carrying an entire beach trip's worth of food, towels, and umbrellas with her because she's stubborn and could do it herself. Obito would be teased by everyone to the point where he would pout, and she would smile at him and he'd forget it ever happened. For 2 seconds until Kakashi made another snide comment, then they'd be at each other's throats. She'd shake her head and smile all the same. Those were her boys after all. It was to be expected of them. It was a lovely memory, if only it was real. In reality, she only got passing glances of the beach on her way to a mission, and on the rare moments where she was on the beach, she couldn't enjoy it for long. Just enough to develop a fondness for the place. She could enjoy it now, but she'd never be able to enjoy it with them. She was alone, now more than ever. Hey Rin. Naruto crashed down onto the sand next to her, his feet making twin craters at his point of landing. Ouch! He yelled, reaching forward and digging into the sand to pull out a perfect cone-shaped seashell that ranged from hot pink to flesh pink in its coloration. It was beautiful. Stupid shell. Can I have it? Rin asked quickly, raising her head barely off her knees. Sure. Naruto flipped the shell in his hands and offered it to you. Why though? The shell was smooth and cold to the touch, its insides were filled to the brim with sand. Whatever creature had once called it home did a wonderful job. She blew into it softly, loosening the sand and shaking it out. It was the perfect size for a necklace. I used to have a collection of shells back in the village. It wasn't a lot, a few like this, one of the big ones that you can hear the ocean in, a conch I think, and a lot of cracked ones. Oh, Naruto dug his palms into the sand. Do you know what happened to it? She didn't even know what happened to herself. Or what even was happening. 2 years. That time frame burned itself into her mind. She had 2 years to accomplish what only the Mizukage had done before her, master the Sanbi. Rin shook her head free of those thoughts, focusing on the waning light of day. Already the brighter stars were filling in the sky behind her, and the moon crescent moon cast its spotlight on the darkening ocean, bathing it in pale light. I don't know, it's probably gone. Just like the rest of her life, or what little was left of it. She twirled the shell in her hand again, tapping it gently as the final bits of sand fell free from its inner spiral. Or at least what she could get out of there without water or some jutsu. She could probably drill a hole on the lip to slide a string through. Maybe it'd be better to just tie the string around it. Naruto hummed. Do you wanna go look for some more shells? I bet we could find a lot here. Like I just found that one on accident. It's getting dark, it'd be hard to see them, besides Jiraiya wants to get to port tomorrow. A city full of people. The perfect place for a Jinchuriki that was prone to lose control any second. What could possibly go wrong? And weren't you helping him with camp? She already missed that soft bed she had in the hut they had stayed at for a few days. Even if the walls didn't provide her any privacy with her 2 traveling companions, it still beat sleeping on the ground by a long shot. At least the campfire was warm and their snoring wasn't quite as loud when it wasn't trapped inside. It's finished up, Jiraiya sent me out here to make sure you were okay and stuff. Naruto pulled a rock from the sand, and tossed it towards the waves as though he meant to skip it. It landed with a plunk. Not that you need me there. It's just being a Jinchuriki is a lot harder when you're alone, Yano. Like it wasn't hard enough already. At least you're not going to die. Neither are you. Naruto spun towards her, the last bit of the sun reflecting off his eyes as he leaned in close to her. You're going to live, Rin. Even if I have to fight the Sanbi with my bare hands. Believe it. You sure are an interesting kid, Naruto. Hey, we're the same age. Still, she gave him an honest smile. You're starting to sound a lot like a Hokage. He smiled like an idiot. But it was still the best smile she'd ever seen. A clue, there had to be a clue. All the pieces were there except for the Sanbi. If they couldn't find it, then years of planning would be for nothing. And their dream, his dream, would never come true. Obito growled, shattering the stone table by throwing it into the wall. The mist had been nothing but a waste of time. They had claimed that the Sanbi had existed there sealed within that brat of a Yondaime Yagura. It was a lie exposed as he choked the life out of that boy's body. Damn it, where the hell is it? He was losing his patience, despite the Zetsu assuring him that the beast still existed. Apparently the fate of all Biju were tied by an inescapable bond of fate. That was why it was his job to find the beast. He would find it and then they would carry out the plan. And finally he would be reunited with Rin in a world without war and conflict. That was all that kept him going sometimes. The thought of being with her after he failed to save her from Kakashi. Bastard, Obito spat, his anger turning down to a slow boil. He reached down to pick up the tattered world map. The locations of all the Jinchuriki were located here, or at least their general whereabouts. The Nine Tails was especially hard to track thanks to Jiraiya. It was a shame that the beast was sealed inside Sensei's son. But he could hardly feel remorse over something he caused. There was a presence in the room. Zetsu. What do you want? He didn't bother to turn towards the creature. Of all the Atsuki, only it knew of their plans, yet they knew nothing of its schemes, save that they shared a common goal. But the way the plant spoke put that into question. One of our sensors has detected the Sanbi's chakra. Its voice spoke twice as though the first was followed by an echo trying to surpass the original sound. That was good news, very good news. Where? Near the port town of Asagi. Zetsu began its slow retreat within stone floor. One of the plant's better habits was that it left as soon as it finished giving information. It's near the location the Nine Tails was last seen. Obito examined his orange mask, feeling the weight of it on his hands. It was time to return to the outside world as Toby once more. If I can confirm the Jinchuriki, should I attempt to capture it? If you can do so discreetly. The plant vanished. Obito placed the mask on and sighed. He hated this childish act he had to put on. It was nothing but the echoing laughter of who he used to be. Toby is a good boy. A knot rested in her stomach. It wasn't because of the smell of rotten fish that permeated the populace. Everything and everybody smelled of salt, water, sweat, and fish. Lots of fish. A fog of grime blanketed the town, leaving everything slick with what could only be a slime made of all the dead organisms of the ocean. No, the knot in her stomach was something else entirely. It made her muscles tighten, unwilling to move forward. The last time she had felt like this, Obito died. It was like her body was screaming at her that she should not be here, that this was a mistake. I shouldn't be here. The words escaped her mouth as free as a breath, drifting through the foul fog like an angry wasp that stung at Jiraiya. Girl. Jiraiya stopped. It was always girl with him, like he kept forgetting her name or that he wasn't worth noticing. She wasn't, was she? She was nothing without the creature sealed inside of her. If it wasn't for that, then this man wouldn't even give her the time of day. Rin. Naruto bounced into her field of view like a ball of sunshine. A sight that was as welcomed as the first rays of sunshine that woke her up this morning. She wanted to stay asleep. To stay groggy. Don't be like that, we want you here. Besides, I'm sure there's a ton of cool stuff to do in this village. There might even be a mission or something, right, pervy sage? Jiraiya groaned, rolling his shoulders that caused his joints to pop like 1,000 firecrackers. Look, we're just here to meet an informant. We're not going to go on some mission or try to save the day. Asagi is a quiet town where nothing happens, and I plan to keep it that way. Then why can't me and Naruto wait outside? Like at the beach a few miles back, it was low tide now and she could scour the tide pools for shells and just relax with her feet touching the water. Instead of being trapped in this city feeling like she needed to be holding something back. Jiraiya let out a sigh that could make a child complain of back pains and led them down another alleyway. The center of the narrow street was a rut where the water pooled, ultimately ending up back in the harbor. Boxes, barrels, and garbage decorated the streets, and any number of cats feasted on their contents. Above them a net of wires and clothing hung like jungle vines. Because Naruto is a trouble magnet. You leave him alone in a village and he'll find the only person of note in the village, piss them off, cause them to enter a dangerous situation, and then save them a few hours later. It almost sounded like they'd been through that before. Jiraiya opened the door to a restaurant that smelled more like butter and bread than dead fish, an impressive feat in this town. And you're here because there's someone you wanted to meet. A glass shattering drew her eyes inwards towards a far corner where she saw him. That constant half-asleep look was shattered. His easily too cool for everything attitude was nothing but a distant memory. It was one of the few times she had seen him cry. Somehow, despite the years between them, he still looked exactly the same. Kakashi? She asked, her mouth going dry. She should have been happy, instead she felt that knot in her stomach grow. Kakashi reached out towards her, unmoving from his spot. She wanted nothing more than to run over to him and hug him. Rin. His voice cracked, tears fell from his uncovered eye. She could see years of guilt and regret melting away, stripping away the man that they had built. But how? You don't look like you've changed at all. This isn't some kind of genjutsu, is it? I wish it was. She brought a hand up to her chest, squeezing it where her heart was. It hurt. Every beat was more agonizing than the last. Her standing and not screaming on the floor in pain was a miracle in of itself. But I'm here, Kakashi. I'm really me. She hoped. She was still numb to the idea of being in the future. 13 years. She had skipped over so much. He stepped away from his table towards her. The world fell away as she saw Kakashi for the first time. She wanted to cry. She wanted to scream. She wanted to run away and pretend this wasn't real. That this was all some dream and that Kakashi wasn't some old man now. Instead she smiled. But how are you? The words dropped from his mouth. He extended a hand out to touch her. A gesture she mirrored, and their hands met for the first time. She used to love him. But he was so different now. And she was still the same. She let go, her hand dropping to her side. How am I alive? She laughed as much as she said, but cried even more, offering Kakashi a shrug. I don't know what happened. You were about to. I was about to. She couldn't say the words. They wouldn't form. After all, it was impossible. Kakashi would never kill her. The world froze, and I felt myself get sucked backwards. The next thing I knew, she was silenced by her face being forced against the rough surface of Kakashi's jacket. This was a first. Kakashi had never hugged her before. How should she act? What should she do? Was it weird that he was now a grown man and puberty had yet to hit her in any meaningful way? I'm just happy you're alive. His voice cracked again. Here was a man that held the record for youngest Junin hugging her like a long-lost sibling, crying his eyes out. No, there was nothing wrong with this. I always wanted to believe that you weren't dead. That you really did vanish. I searched for you, but they said it was guilt. I'm sorry, Rin. I should have looked harder. It's okay, Kakashi. It was so weird to have to actually look up at him. He was as old as Minato-sensei was, and probably a little taller. I don't think you could have found me anyways. I only appeared a few weeks ago. Appeared? Kakashi released her and took a step back. Piece by piece he gathered his composure, an aloof shoulder slump, a bored look in his eyes, left foot slightly angled to the right. Yep, this was Kakashi. What do you mean appeared? Time travel? Jiraiya interrupted, motioning towards the table. With a motion, The staff at the restaurant moved as one. The tables were cleared, doors locked, windows closed, and the sign was flipped. Each member of the staff filtered out, changing clothes as they went, fishermen, a few beggars, even an officer. Kakashi looked from her to Jiraiya, passing Naruto along the way. Time travel. Yay. Naruto jumped between them, positively bursting with excitement. When we found her, she was about to be controlled by the Sanbi, but me and Jiraiya beat it up and sealed it back inside of her now. Why don't we sit down, Naruto? Kakashi rubbed his student's head in much the same way their sensei used to do to Obito. It sounds like you three have had quite the adventure. Especially you, Rin. Don't talk to me like I'm a kid, Kakashi. She was technically a few months older than him. 13 years ago. Wait, how old was she now? Oh, was I? Kakashi smiled. It was the same as he used to back in the day. He reached out and rubbed her hair. You just remind me a lot of one of my other adorable little students. Or do they remind me of you? How are you more okay with this than I am? She pushed his hand away, taking a step back. It all came boiling out of her like a volcano ready to explode. I traveled 13 years into the future, Kakashi. I might as well have been dead for that time. And I would have been if Naruto hadn't stopped me from killing myself. I have the Sanbi sealed inside of me. I still don't want this to be real. The tears were coming. Her will was slipping. The shadow lurked behind her, ready to try and devour her whole. But it stopped. Something held that shadow back. So please, Kakashi, why are you so okay with this? He looked at her like she was a kid throwing a tantrum. Because I want you to be alive, Rin. And you're here with me right now. If it is some kind of genjutsu, then the caster is beyond even the greatest of ninja. If you're some clone, then you wouldn't have the Sanbi inside of you or Jiraiya's trust. I have no reason to believe that you are Rin outside of my own selfish desires. But I have no reason not to believe you either. You jerk. She was shaking. She wasn't ready for this. There was no way that this was real. Why was she the only sane one? How could they just casually accept time travel as an answer? It just wasn't possible. You're supposed to have my side in all this. She bolted for the door. Fumbling desperately against the lock for what felt like years, the voices of the others nothing more than background noise. She flung the door open, blinded to all but the tears in her eyes, and she ran forward, slamming into the wall and darting in a direction. Why was she running? What was she running from? Where was she going? She didn't know. She didn't care. It didn't matter. She just needed to get away from them. She needed to be alone right now. The knot in her stomach was festering, growing heavier with each step she took. Why? The voice rumbled in her head like thunder without sound. A single thought that did not belong to her. Sanbi. Now even the beast inside of her was showing concern. What the hell was wrong with this world? It was like everything was trying to keep her on the cusp of sanity. Rin. She could hear Naruto running after her. His shouts only made her want to run harder, faster, and further away. She made another turn, pushing through a crowded street that was half fish market, half harbor. She ignored the shouts of the angry fishermen who she nearly pushed over. Nothing mattered. It wasn't real. It couldn't be real. Another corner and she'd be out of the city. Into the wilderness where she could be alone. Then she'd be able to gather her thoughts. And not be an emotional wreck. Yay, that was it. All she had to do was be alone. An hour, a day, a week. It didn't matter. She turned and was stopped as she crashed into someone. Or so she thought. She saw 3 men, 2 were wearing black cloaks with red clouds on them. The other wore only black with an orange spirally mask. It was him that she crashed into, or rather crashed through. She stumbled at the lack of impact, sending her to the ground. Sorry, she mumbled. She had to get away. She needed to leave the city. The man in the orange mask grabbed her, helping her up. But his grip on her arm was like a manacle. He was shaking, just as much as she was. Rin. She knew that voice. She knew that voice like it was her own. She had heard it call her name so many times growing up. It lacked the youthful cheer it once had, replaced by something sinister and desperate. No, she tried to push away from him. You're dead. You can't be here. Rin. he said again, pulling her towards him. She caught a glimpse of it. That red eye she remembered seeing when Kakashi killed her. The Sharingan. That was it, wasn't it? The Sharingan was great at genjutsu. She was in a genjutsu. That was it, there was no way this was real. He took his mask off and the world fell away from them. It was him. Sure, he was older, and it looked like he hadn't smiled in years. But it was without a doubt him. Obito. Her breath felt like ash ready to set the world aflame. Everything was breaking. She needed to get away. She needed to break out of the genjutsu. She needed to be alone. She fell backwards, deeper into the darkness, letting the shadows claim her. She was alive. Rin was alive. It wasn't just some random girl that looked like her. It wasn't just his mind playing tricks on him. It was true. She was alive, and just like he remembered her to be. For the first time in 13 years, Obito felt like himself. Obito, she said, her voice as brittle as glass. Her eyes were large and full of fear as he held her arm. Now that he had her, he wasn't going to let go. Nothing else mattered. He would keep her safe. He would keep her alive. Rin, he smiled at her and her eyes went wide with fear. Why was she afraid of him? Shouldn't she be as happy as he was? She was alive. They were both alive. It's me, it's Obito. Don't you remember me? She didn't say anything. Instead, a dark aura enveloped her. The unmistakable sign of a Biju taking over their host. No, it couldn't be. Not again. Rin. He grabbed her by both arms. Stay with me, Rin. Don't give in. Stay with me. He couldn't lose her. Not now. Not again. Itachi. Kisame. Subdue her and watch out for. Hey. Of course he would show up right now. The Kyuubi's Jinchuriki barreled around the corner. What are you doing? Let go of her. Well. Looks like it's our lucky day. 2 Jinchuriki for the price of 1. Kisami's sword slammed into the ground with a thud, leaving a miniature crater at the impact. Why don't you be a good little ninja and come here? I'd hate to cause all these innocent civilians to die. Even if Jiraiya was here, they still had the advantage. In a fight, Jiraiya was strong enough to take on all but pain and have the upper hand, in not just skill and experience but tenacity as well. The man had already taken out 2 of their former members on his quest for Orochimaru. Jiraiya ran around the corner moments later, pushing Naruto behind him. Then he appeared. Kakashi. Talk about one shitty reunion. At least he had his mask still on. Obito? Kakashi asked. His eyes were hard and unwavering. They were enemies right now. Everything else could wait. You too. Right. He took his mask off when he saw Rin, didn't he? Kisame. Itachi. Ignore them, we have the Sanbi, we're leaving. Mist erupted from Rin, thicker than any smoke screen. It clung to everything, seeping into every crevice. Within moments they were all trapped within the beast's genjutsu. Crystal clear water stretched out in front of her. She could see the fish swimming and playing within the shallow shore. The sea was so full of life and beauty. A coral reef formed a ring that kept the dark blue waters that laid beyond at bay. This was perfection. The water splashed against her feet that were half buried in the warm sand beneath the cool water. The sun hung high in the sky, its light only matched by the thousands of stars that joined it. Even the trail of the galaxy was visible this night, marking the trajectory of the sun and the moon as the two danced across the sky. But what held her the most was the sparkling gem-like shells that littered the beach like 1,000 rainbows turned frozen before they could arc across the sky. Reaching down, Rin plucked one up. It was conical, smooth, and warm. A shell made of stars that changed colors on its own. She was alone here, completely isolated from the outside world. None of that mattered. Here she could stay and be surrounded by her shells and relax next to the water. Rin turned towards the tree that dug its roots deep into the sand, water lapping against its numerous trunks. Its branches turned sharply once they left the water, hanging just high enough in some places where she could sit with just her legs dangling in the water. The tree glowed with each wave, starting from the base and rolling up towards the leaves where shells grew like fruit. Curiosity got the better of her. She took a bite of the shell. It was hard and soft, slightly salty but incredibly sweet. It was like eating a candied apple. Rin rested on one of the branches, feeling the cool water barely touch her toes. A blanket of sunshine enveloped her. She could be happy here, all alone with nothing to bother her. It didn't matter if it wasn't real. It was better that out there where they were. Time came to a standstill as she watched the stars swirl overhead, they orbited the sun. A hollowness overtook her. What was she doing here? She was running away. Was this who she was? A coward. What would Minato say? Or Kushina? Oh, that's right, the dead didn't talk. The water splashed up around her, nearly knocking her from her perch. But she didn't care, she was far too comfortable. She turned her head just the slightest bit to see herself staring at the sandbee. It was large, but far smaller than it normally was, just big enough to eat her in a single bite, but not large enough to destroy the scenery around her. Somehow the creature seemed at home in here. Even if everything about it clashed with the gentle beauty in this place. For another eternity she stared at the creature. And it stared back at her. Neither one of them moving. Until the beast opened its mouth. Excuse me, are you done being alone? Its voice was almost childlike compared to its massive body but still shook Rin to the core. The ones outside are loud. You don't want to kill me? No. Why? For some reason she just had to ask that question. Here was a creature of death and destruction that had been used to turn her into a living bomb, claiming that it didn't want to kill her. Her instincts were telling her she was an idiot to just accept it and move on. One of the creature's tails extended towards her, the three large spines acting like a thumbless hand. A conch filled with various other shells was sat on her lap. My collection. You collect shells too? Rin picked up one of the small shells inside the conch and marveled at it. It was a sand dollar, in perfect condition, not a single crack or missing piece. It didn't shine like the ones growing from the tree. This one was real. It's a lovely collection. Thanks, it's gone now. The collection crumbled to dust in her lap, blowing away with the wind. I'm sorry, I know what that's like, I've lost my collection as well. Rin sat up to look at the creature more fully. It could end her right now if it wanted to. But it didn't. Right. Do you know where we are? The sandbee nodded, and its tail poked right above her heart. Here, in your dreams. I like your dreams, they're tasty. Your nightmares are not tasty. It stuck out its massive tongue like a child being forced medicine. You eat dreams. Is that why she has had so many nightmares? No, she had those before the beast was sealed inside of her. So you don't want to kill me? Do you want me to kill you? Rin caught herself just before she fell into the water. Her heart was racing. She didn't know the answer to that question. I don't think so. Then why had it been tormenting her? Why had it been trying to break out all this time? Then I won't. It shook its shell from side to side. The loud ones are pushing me back inside again. It's your turn now. I'm sorry. It's okay. She was still confused. Still lost at the actions of this beast. Lost at what her friends and teammates had told her, and how they acted. Why were they all so okay with this? Even Obito was back from the dead, didn't even bat an eye at her time traveling. Wait. His Sharingan. She had seen it that night. This was all his fault. Rin was slammed into consciousness with the force of a charging bull. She woke up to see destruction around her. A pillar of coral extended skywards, the remains of a building were skewered on it. The wall that surrounded the village was shattered, and trees were uprooted. But it was localized. Rin, Naruto shouted, pulling her into a hug. It was warm and inviting. She fell into the hug, returning it using Naruto's heavy breaths to slow her own. Once her breath was steady, did she look around. Kakashi was hurt and panting. Jiraiya had blood pouring from a few spots. A ninja she didn't recognize stood to the side wearing a green suit of some kind. Wait, was that guy? Where did he come from? But no Obito or those other two ninja that were with him. Where's Obito? She asked Kakashi, separating herself from Naruto before her cheeks began to feel warm. That was Obito, right? Kakashi nodded. It was, and he got away. We have to find him again. Obito slumped against the toilet, resting his cheek against the cold surface. The energy to care about things like where he was simply did not exist. All he had known for the past day had been a poor excuse of sleep with dreams that haunted him and the cold comfort of the toilet as he vomited into it. It was like his body was rejecting his own existence. There was no doubt what it was. It was her. It was all her fault. She was supposed to be dead. He was going to make a perfect world so that she wouldn't have died. But now here she was alive and exactly as he last saw her. His stomach twisted, forcing more of the bile up from his mouth. Food would only make it worse, not only because it would add more fuel, but because the very idea of eating made his limbs feel weaker. He was going to wither and die here in the bathroom. I can't believe it. Obito slid to the side, his head bouncing off of the wall hard enough to rattle his teeth. He let out a laugh that died into a sob halfway through. She's alive. Rin is alive. Those words burned more than any acid. They tore at his heart, shredding it to ribbons. What the hell had he been doing for the past 13 years? Following some dead man's blind hatred about a world. A world so beautiful that it allowed Rin to exist, not once but twice. A world that would allow a monster like him to exist at the same time as her. He had murdered for her. Butchered, slaughtered, terrorized. There was more blood on his hands than any of the Akatsuki. Not just random killing. He knew most of the names he claimed. His actions had paved a bloody path for the future. The blood of his own mother and father were on his hands. The blood of his family, his friends, companions, teachers, everyone he knew. He had killed them all, and for what? A chance to see Rin again. That was it, wasn't it? That perfect world he had sought was nothing more than a facade to hide his true motives. To see Rin again. And he had been willing to plunge the world into chaos and darkness to obtain that dream. What a pitiful creature he was. What would Rin say if she knew all that he had done? Obito laughed again, rubbing a hand into his single eye. She was too pure. She would be appalled by his actions. She wouldn't believe him at first. Maybe it'd be better if I just disappeared. He could do it too. He could just walk into his own little world and never be seen again. It'd be better than facing Rin as the monster he was. With Kamui he could simply never be in this world again. Kakashi was right. He really was just up. That was it, wasn't it? This was all his fault. Rin being here, at this time just as she was back then. This was his fault. His own inability had caused this. Obito let out another laugh. This one tearing through his body like wind through a hollow tree trunk. It was not the sound of a man overcome by joy. It was the sound of a man waiting to die. Sometimes the path of life was straightforward with all the obstacles and the goal in sight. It was still easy to get lost on the path by simply not bothering to walk it, something Kakashi had been doing for years. He had only recently started moving forward again thanks to his students. Now the path of life was a twisting labyrinth where even the way back was obscured. The only way out was forward. If he stopped for even a moment he'd risk everything. Swallowing another sip of the sweet sake that Jiraiya enjoyed so much, Kakashi let out a sigh. Already he felt closer to Jiraiya's age than he was to Rin's. She was 13 years old, and here he was a 26, or was it 27-year-old broken shell of a man that was just now starting to feel human again. And then all of this happened. They were both alive. Both of his teammates. Alive. If that wasn't a good enough reason to drink, then he'd be sober until he died. And that would be a wonderful thing. Or wait, would that be a bad thing? He pulled at his mask as it hung around his neck like a scarf. Rin and Naruto were asleep, sent to bed to recover from the fight. Something he should be doing had it not been for his horrendous headache and inability to so much as consider going to bed. He eyed Jiraiya and Guy, who had been so kind as to join him in this venture. What should I do? He asked, rolling back on the bench. A moth was drawn to the dull humming light of the lamp, unable to escape its allure yet unable to get close or else it would burn up. There was so much he needed to do, it felt like he was being pulled in 1,000 directions. Jiraiya groaned, drinking directly from the bottle. Not a day that goes by I don't ask myself that question. I'll let you know if I ever manage to get anything that even remotely looks like an answer. But it won't be the answer you want. It'll be my answer, Start digging for yourself. Kakashi. Guy slammed his drink onto the table. My youthful rival, all will become clear in action. Once you start, you must not stop and commit to the goal. That is the only way forward. You must follow your heart. His heart. He had shut that thing away years ago when it started screaming in agony. But what would it tell him now? What did he want? Rin, Obito, Konoha, his students. Rin was here with Jiraiya. She was struggling to control the Sanbi sealed inside of her, only made worse by the 13 years of life she had missed out on. If he was here with her, would that make things easier or harder? He was a familiar face, but was that good or bad? His duty to Konoha was something he needed to consider as well. They were just now getting back on their feet and needed him now to perform the missions that others could not. This meeting with Jiraiya had already cost them so much. And then there was Obito. Obito was alive, and lost. He wasn't just a part of Akatsuki, he was their leader. Another drink burned his throat. What had happened? How could someone that had once dreamed of being the Hokage, of making the world a better place, possibly be the leader of Akatsuki? There had to be more to it than that. His students as well, he owed them more than he'd cared to admit. Sakura was still in the leaf training day and night to catch up to Naruto and Sasuke. He hadn't seen that much drive in any one person since Guy. Naruto was with Jiraiya, learning to control the Kyuubi and becoming a more well-rounded shinobi. Sasuke was as lost as Obito was. They pulled at his every thought, each one bled into the next and threatened to drown him under a sea of possibilities. I think. Silenced by Jiraiya arm meeting the table like the sound of thunder, Kakashi stared at the teacher of his teacher. Don't make your choice when you're drunk, Kakashi. Emotions and logic bleed into each other. It's great for mulling over your options when everything is mixed together, but shitty for seeing a clear picture. That's what the hangover is for. Guy clanged his glass against Jiraiya's. Now then, my youthful rival, what do you say? Me and you have a competition. That sounded like a wonderful idea. Alright, Guy, what is it? What do you think? Guy grinned, pulling out yet another bottle of drink. The cork came off with a hiss, and the smell that drifted out of that bottle could have torn the paint off the walls. Last man standing wins. That's 2 good ideas in a row, you're on a roll tonight. So that's what he looks like without a mask. I was kind of hoping he'd have buck teeth or something else. He just looks really plain without it. Rin couldn't agree more. Now that she had finally seen what Kakashi looked like under the mask, she couldn't help but feel disappointed, like the whole thing was nothing but a pointless mystery for the sake of being a mystery. But that was a small disappointment compared to what she felt looking at the groaning drunk form of her teammate. She could understand why he was drunk. Obito was alive, and he was their enemy. That was a good reason to want to find an escape. To simply leave everything behind and focus on something else. Something she wanted to do right now. He was in her mind like a shadow, his disfigured face, the lack of life in his eyes, bearing down at her like the dead of winter. Kakashi. She kicked him in the side, earning a groan from him. Her nose crinkled at the smell of his breath. Get up, Kakashi. She kicked again. He caught her foot, lone eye opened and glaring at her. He cursed at the noise and brightness of the room, pushing her away even as he sat up. What? You're drunk. So. Her voice broke at the volume and Kakashi winced, wavering even while sitting. He looked pathetic. You don't think there's better things to be doing? Sleep. Kakashi drawled, smacking his lips twice before he fell back down floor with a thud. Sleep's the most important thing right now. She screamed, kicking at him again and again. He blocked each one. It would have continued had it not been for Naruto grabbing her arm and pulling her away. Rin. He whispered her name like it was a secret. Come on, let's go. We're not going to get anything out of them today. I know it sucks, but there's nothing we can do. He's done this before, enough to know what to do. With 3 steady breaths, Rin calmed herself and let out a long sigh that made her feel twice her age. If she was, she'd be on the floor twice as drunk as Kakashi. Fine. Despite having 6 ninja that could wipe the city off the map, and a rampaging Jinchuriki battling it out just inside its boundaries, life continued on as normal. Already the port was bustling with fishing boats coming in from the morning's bounty. A few trade ships lined the docks bringing in the various goods that the people needed. But it was mostly fish, fish and more fish. At least the fog that had strangled the city when she first entered had finally lifted, revealing the splendor of the sea. Hey, Naruto called, drawing her attention from one of the few stalls that wasn't selling fish. You want to head to the beach? The lady over there said there's some cool whirlpools and something called a blowhole over that way. Are you sure it's safe? What if he came back? What would she do? What would she say? Obito was alive. She wasn't dead. And Kakashi was a drunken that drank his problems away instead of dealing with them like a man. Naruto shrugged. If they think it's safe enough to get drunk off there, it should be safe enough for us to go to the beach. Just because they're being irresponsible doesn't mean we should be irresponsible. The beach sounded a lot better than hanging around here or watching a bunch of grown men slowly get their shit together. We need to be careful. If they come back. They won't come back. Naruto had his arms behind his head, tapping his foot on the ground. I mean, they haven't before. Like when I went out with Jiraiya to get Tsunade, we fought them off once, then they stopped chasing us. I think they need to recharge or something. Oh, Rin placed a finger on her lip and paused. She really did want to go. And she had a lot of questions for Naruto. Most of which shouldn't be said in public. Well, if you're sure. Awesome. Naruto took her hand, all but dragging her out of town with a giant smile on his face. At least one of them got to be happy. This is going to be awesome. We haven't had a day off in forever. They got lost twice on the way towards the beach Naruto heard about. But when they found it, there was no mistaking it. A soft sandy shore was dotted with large rocks, was marked by a band of dead sea plants where the waves met the beach at high tide. With the tide out, the numerous rocky outcroppings formed 100 of isolated tide pools. Rin bit her lip. The water was clear as well, looking warm despite it being simply a nice day out. A trail barely wide enough for one person cut into the cliff side was the only way to access the beach, perfect seclusion. So, how long have Akatsuki been after you? Rin followed after Naruto, carefully placing each step on the path. One hand traced against the sun-baked stone while the other felt the salt-laden wind that beaconed them to the cove. I don't know, like a couple months or something, when me and the pervy sage were going to get the old hag to become the Hokage. Pervy sage is Jiraiya, and the old hag is Tsunade. Yay. Does Kakashi have a nickname? He's your sensei, right? Naruto paused for a second, bouncing down off the 3-foot drop that was the final step off the path. His nickname is Late. Late. Kakashi. Kakashi is never late. What are you talking about? He's always late. Especially when we were training for a team. Naruto offered a hand to help her down. She ignored it, landing beside him, feeling the sand absorb much of the impact. He's only on time for missions and stuff. There was simply no way that Kakashi would ever be late. It was just a thing that didn't happen. Still, 13 years had changed Kakashi. Anyways, you were saying about the Akatsuki. Oh, right. Well, they came after me then, and. He paused, the light in his eyes fading. And Sasuke got hurt. After that, we didn't see them for the whole trip. I don't think they want to fight Jiraiya if they don't have to. And that's the only time they tried something like that. They were basing this trip on one encounter. Yay. I don't think they're too smart. Naruto's smile came back with a laugh, once again looking like an excited puppy. I mean, the pervy sage left me alone all the time when I was trying to learn the Rasengan. And they didn't even wait for us to be asleep or something. But aren't they S-ranked missing nin? Naruto shrugged. I don't get it either. They're super scary and bad guys, but they're just doing things weird. I was out on solo missions for a month or so before we left on this trip. Still, shouldn't we be more worried? They're after Jinchuriki, right? Why? What could they possibly want the Biju for? Or doing something to stop them? We are. Naruto walked backwards towards the shore. He never took his eyes off of her, a soft reassuring smile on his face. It reminded her a lot of Minato sensei actually. That's why Jiraiya is training us, or at least part of the reason. The water was slightly too cold, but still pleasant against her feet as it rushed in the gaps of her sandals. One of the tide pools had a hermit crab scuttling about, a few unclaimed shells lay in the sandy bottom. A few minnows frolicked about, dashing from one side to the other at random. A lone starfish sat in the shallows, one of its legs barely out of the water. What's the rest of the reason? She asked, plucking out one of the shells. It was a small little coquina barely the size of a coin, easy to lose and easy to carry but hard to break. A great second piece to add to her collection. Naruto splashed from behind her. By the time she turned to see him, his entire right leg was wet. His face lacked energy again. It was only for a moment before he locked eyes with her and sprung back to his normal self. I need to get stronger to bring someone back. Sasuke, right? He nodded, sucking on his bottom lip. Yay. How'd you guess? Women's intuition. It was obvious. Whenever Sasuke was mentioned, it was like a reset button on Naruto's mood. What happened with him? Orochimaru tricked him. Something told her to leave it there. That was not a wound to be picked at right now. The tension from yesterday still stung at the mood like a beehive. Still, they had to talk about that. She needed to know. She found an octopus relaxing in one of the large pools, its large eyes looking right at her as it shrunk back under a rocky overhang. With a practiced hand, she moved forward, touching the ground in front of the octopus. It shied aware. Some giant predator had seen it. Then, as the moments passed and the water still, a single tentacle creeped out and tapped her on the top of her hand. It was kind of cute in the way that most small things were. Can I ask you a question, Naruto? She turned to look at him. He was squatting down in front of another whirlpool, his arms fiddling with something. Huh, oh yeah, sure. He spun around, keeping his arms out of her sight. What's up? She sat down on a dry spot, allowing her feet to dangle in the small channel of water that separated them. She could make out her own reflection in the clear water that rippled with each passive wave. At least she still looked the same, even if anything was different. Have you ever spoken to the Kyuubi? She had expected the question to hang in the air, to force an awkward silence between them. Instead she got, yay, and he's a giant grumpy jerk. Calling me weak and a brat while grumbling about escaping. Naruto put on his best big scary demon voice. You shall fear me, mortal, blah, blah blah, I'm evil and grump blah. Oh, she clutched at her heart. I was just wondering because I talked to the Sanbi. Don't worry about it. Cause Gaara, he's like us and he has this big sand raccoon thing inside of him and it doesn't let him sleep. I think being a jerk must be a Biju thing. Well, that's just it. When I spoke to the Sanbi, he didn't seem like a bad guy. He almost seemed nice and kind of like a little kid. In a weird way, he was kind of cute too. He said that I had tasty dreams, so I was kind of hoping you'd be able to help me understand it. I'm still new to this Jinchuriki thing. I'm not all that good at it either. I really wish I wasn't, ya. No. I can't help but feel like if I wasn't a Jinchuriki, I might have parents and a family. I'm grateful for what I have, Iruka sensei, Kakashi sensei, the pervy sage and the old hag too. Sakura, Sasuke, the others. He smiled at her, his face turning a shade of pink. But I still want more. She stood up on the water's surface, crossing the deepest part of the water. A sea lion poked its out of the water to eye her curiously. I know how you feel, Naruto. If I hadn't become a Jinchuriki, then who knows what could have happened. She'd probably be married with a kid right now. Touching Naruto's shoulder, she sat down next to him. But we have to keep moving forward, right? We don't have a lot of time to look back. Thank you, Rin. It's nice to be able to talk about this stuff. He shifted his hand again, still keeping whatever was inside of it out of her sight. I mean, with someone my own age. You can't talk about this with your friends. He bit his lip and took a breath. It wouldn't be the same. They wouldn't really be able to get what it's like having a giant grumpy demon inside of you. Yay. Probably not. Rin smiled. But I think the Akamichi do a good job with their stomachs. They shared a laugh. Naruto held out his fist in front of her face. His fingers slipped and a thin string of leather with a shell secured at the bottom fell free. It was a conical one with a color that was like the ocean with white dots sprinkled around it. Its splendor could rival that of any gem. Here. Huh. It was a lot like Naruto's eyes. Sparkling, simple, elegant, and blue as can be. What's this? Well, you like seashells, right? So I made this for you. He was looking away, a blush on his face. Was he embarrassed that he did a bad job? Sure, the string could be more secure, but it was still beautiful. She leaned forward and Naruto took the hint, sliding the necklace around her head. It was heavy, but also kind of warm, in that it made her happy. Thank you, Naruto. I'll be sure to keep it with me always. Years later, they would discover that in this village, giving a girl a blue shell from this cove was a marriage proposal. So you're leaving? Those words came out cracked and hallowed. The meat of their meaning was already stripped bare, leaving nothing but the rotten truth. Kakashi was leaving her behind. She saw it coming from the packed bag, the awkward way he stared off into the distance, guy running in place. All of these pointed towards that truth. And she had thought she was okay with it. But right now she wasn't. Her own bag weighed 1,000 pounds, rooting her to the ground even as fresh tears began to pool in her eyes. Yay, Kakashi said, refusing to meet her gaze. She saw the boy that he once was, always to mature for his own good in some ways, yet crippled in many others. His hand reached out to her but stopped halfway with a twitch. The man that he was now was there too, still growing to make up from what was taken from him. You know why I have to Rin. I need to bring Obito back, and for that I need to get stronger. And we'd just slow you down. She spoke the words he omitted like they were the vegetables on a child's plate. That was fine, she could handle the truth, twisted though it may be. She was in the future, Obito was alive, and Kakashi was Kakashi. Before she could answer, she threw herself at him, burying her face into his flake jacket and squeezing him tight. This was the first time she'd been able to hug Kakashi. It felt different than she thought it would, more like an older brother than anything else. Just you wait, Kakashi, next time we meet you won't even recognize me. I'm going to come back strong and we'll go get Obito back together. She felt Kakashi laugh more than she heard him. He half returned her hug by ruffling her hair. I see my student has been rubbing off on you, Rin. Hey, Naruto shouted from her side. That goes double for me, Kakashi-sensei. I'm going to come back super strong and then we can go get Sasuke and Obito together. Kakashi grabbed her shoulder and pulled Naruto into the small hug. He was smiling, but above all he was happy. I'll be sure to hold you to it. He ruffled Naruto's head, looking towards the blonde. Now, Naruto, Rin is a very important person to me, so I want you to take care of her for me, alright? Hey. She jabbed a finger into Kakashi's chest. I can take care of myself a lot better than you can, Kakashi. That's why I'm here. Guy shouted. She could practically see his teeth shining from behind Kakashi. Worry not, Rin. I'll make certain that my youthful rival doesn't have so much a moment's rest once we get to Konoha. Give him hell, Guy. I'm counting on you. Rin returned Guy's thumbs up, if for no other reason than to tease Kakashi. Hey. Now wait a moment. Kakashi released them, taking a step back, a fake fear etched into his one eye. Though under that was about 1,000,000 pounds of exasperation mixed with an emotion that could only be described as, not looking forward to this, can we talk about this? I don't need to train with. Nonsense, Kakashi. Guy grabbed a hold of him with a grip that was harder to escape than any prison. We've been slacking far too much these past years. It's time to show our students just what it means to be a genius of hard work. Naruto, I should tell you that all of your friends have been training quite hard. If you stop for even a moment they may surpass you. Don't worry, bushy brow sensei. Naruto squeezed his fist. I'm more pumped now than ever. Rin nodded, her fists balled at her side. She had a goal now, no longer would she wander around this time wishing to change the past. She would move forward, and she would bring Obito back to Konoha, and then help Naruto with his dreams. She could do this. She could fix what was broken. After she mastered the Sanbi's power. Alright, enough of the goodbyes. Jiraiya grumbled, grabbing Naruto by the back of his neck like he was a stray cat before shoving him towards the port. Those two need to report back to Tsunade and we have a boat to catch. Wait. Rin stared at the harbor. You never said anything about going on a boat. What's the matter, girl? You get seasick? No, Rin swallowed, I've just never been on a boat before. This is our boat. Naruto looked at the pond toy Jiraiya was boarding as opposed to the much larger looking and cooler looking boat that was just on the other side of the dock from them. It had a dragon on it. And it had a name, Sunward Tsunami Dragon. That was one hell of a cool name, and they should be riding that thing. Not this dingy. It didn't even have a paint or a name, let alone a dragon. And it was barely big enough to have a cabin the size of his bedroom. Which was small, really small. Yep, Jiraiya hummed, unfurling the boring plain white sail. Cost me a pretty penny, so you brats better be grateful, now hop on. Come on, Naruto, Rin said, jumping and sitting down onto one of the benches the boat had in one fluid motion. She was as disappointed as he was, but was too polite to show it. At least we won't have to walk for a while. Ha, Jiraiya barked, don't be expecting me to do all the work, girl. By the time we make landfall, you and Naruto will be able to sail the boat without a problem. Great, more useless work. When was he ever going to need to learn to sail a boat? Please tell me you're not going to teach us how to fish too. Hey, now that's a good idea. Naruto groaned, flopping onto the seat next to Rin. Oh well, at least she was here, and it wasn't like this could get any worse. The sun was out and there wasn't a cloud in the sky. Half a day later and it got worse. Much worse. The sky turned dark and winds lashed at their boat as the waves bucked their boat like an angry horse. All right, brats, Jiraiya roared over the ocean waves. Get inside. Rin was the first one in and Naruto followed after her, crashing into her as she stood in the tiny room that was too small for one of them, let alone three. Two cots, barely half the size of his own bed, were squeezed to the walls that looked ready to be used as storage containers if needed. Sorry, Rin, he apologized, wind lashing at his back. Fortunately there was only so wet and cold he could get. Rin took a step forward, dripping wet but a smile on his face all the same. She seemed so different from before, happier. It's okay, I quit gawking brats and move. Jiraiya shoved him into Rin once again and into the wall. It was awkward for only a second until the door slammed shut and the rain stopped blasting in. Damn storm came out of nowhere, Jiraiya grunted, tossing his wet vest down onto the floor with a moist slap. Can't go anywhere in this weather. Shouldn't someone be out there to make sure the boat doesn't sink or something? Rin asked, his body still between Jiraiya and her. Do you want to go back out there? Jiraiya wrung his hair like a dish towel, forcing out more water than what should be possible. No, she admitted, looking down at the floor. But the boat's fine. A wave rocked the boat up and down, forcing Jiraiya to brace against the ceiling for a moment. This storm is rough but it won't sink us. I just don't know what way to go without the sun or the stars. Safer to just ride it out and get some rest. Jiraiya pointed at one of the two cots. There was no way he was going to fit in that thing. He was taller than it was long. That one's mine, he pointed at the other one. And you two will be sharing that one. None of this sleeping on the floor bullshit. He stamped his foot on the ground as it splashed lightly. Don't want no sick kids. Actually being wet and cold won't, Rin began. Fine, no angsty little shits that can't make good choices because they couldn't sleep because they were cold, wet and tired. Sheesh, bad enough I got all these lectures from Tsunade. Jiraiya popped his back and turned towards his bed, somehow squeezing into it like a giant bear in a small cave. Germ theory this, don't eat that, wash that, you're going to die of alcohol poisoning, blah, blah, blah. Oh, sorry. Don't listen to him, he's just grumpy that there's no beer or girls out here. Wait, not that you're not a girl, I just mean you're not a girl that Jiraiya can perv out on. Not that you're not pretty or anything, it's just that I think you're not up to his standards. Wait, that sounded bad, I mean that he. Naruto, she laughed, brushing the hair out of her face. It's fine, I understand what you mean. And thank you. Quit flirting and get to bed, you two. Well, now he was blushing. He couldn't even begin to protest. Just sputter and try not to look at Rin. Finally the words came out. Hey, she's a good medic. Jiraiya waved them off like he was swatting a fly. Come on Naruto, let's dry off. She touched his shoulder, drawing his attention back towards her. In the dim light he could barely see her smile, let alone any blush she might have. At least his own was hidden. He heard her gulp. And go to bed. I can sleep on the. No, both Jiraiya and Rin said. What I mean is Jiraiya's right, it's best if we share a bed, it shouldn't be that bad, right? He felt her hand drop from his shoulder. Now hurry up and dry off. How? She giggled. How else? Use the training we've been doing to push the water away from you. Oh, the storm grew outside, and soon thunder could be heard and flashes of light snuck in between the cracks. They laid on the bed, fully clothed, back to back, holding on for dear life as the boat rocked back and forth. The only thing that kept them on it was a set of ropes and their own bodies being wedged into the damn crate. How long had he stared at the wood as the waves rocked them back and forth? Seconds, minutes, days, years. Hey Naruto, Rin asked. He felt her head move to try and get a better look at him. Yay, Jiraiya snored. Are you comfortable? His face was pressed up against the wall so close that his cheek was getting splinters. Not really you. Nope. I have an idea though. It was impossible not to feel her every movement. With each motion she turned like the hands on a clock until her head was facing the back of his. Okay. Now you turn.